a sneak peek at what's coming up next.
But when you're having conversations with people who disagree with you politically, I think it's okay to just concede on certain points that aren't worth fighting. So if somebody says, I'm for free college, and they say, well, nothing's free, just say, yeah, of course, we pay for it with our tax dollars, but I think it's worth it to spend the money on that. I feel like all of that is irrelevant. Like arguing about whether he's a good or bad guy is not the point. Really, the argument we should be having is about whether we should be deporting people without due process and whether we should just allow the Trump administration to just send people out of the country without going through the proper channels.
When they introduce a bill, they don't have to give a shit of whether it's constitutional or not. It's somebody else's job to challenge it, and then it goes to the Supreme Court. And once
there won't be anyone to challenge it once RFK puts us all in camps.
Oh, so
that was a difficult lesson that I had to learn. I did have some misogynist feelings at that time because of that bitterness I had. I also had to realize that some of the blame was on me because of the type of people that I was surrounding myself with and the type of women that I was talking to or attracting. Like if I'm going to a bar and picking up women at the bar, that's probably not the best place to meet a girl.
Here's something I'll say about that entitled thing. I was standing in line at a coffee place the other day, and the person behind the counter looked at me and then waved the person behind me to them, around me, and took their coffee order. And then I go to step up, and the person behind the counter said, "Excuse me just a minute, I need to help catch up with the orders." And I just stood there, and I didn't make any assumptions initially until the person who walked around me to order said, "It must feel weird to you to have somebody else be treated better for once." But I'm not proud of what I did. But I slapped that fucking coffee out of that fucking human being's hand, and I walked out.
Get ready for peak autism infotainment. Thrilling topics, amazing guests, great laughs, and autism.
On the Spectrum, an autistic podcast.
All right, welcome to another episode of On the Spectrum podcast. My name is Steve.
I'm Nick.
Yes, and we're your dynamic duo. So there's been a lot of crazy stuff going on lately, and I wanted to talk about something that I think is important, especially at a time like this where there's a lot of things going on in the world. Some people might be unhappy with the current state of the political climate, et cetera. And I think that it's important that we remember how to when we're having discussions within circles, let's say on autistic spaces online or liberal spaces or anything like that. Not that I'm saying that this is a primarily liberal space, but when we're having discussions with people, I think that we're ineffective sometimes at spreading our message and supporting our allies and people who are on the same side of us. And by that, I mean, I think it's okay sometimes to give grace to people, to concede points, to fight the battles that really matter rather than arguing over things that aren't as important. And so that's kind of what I wanted to talk about. What I think, to give you an example of this, let's say you were talking something about a Charlie Kirk video earlier or something about them. What was the specific one? And it was about free college, right? So this kid free in college. This if for those of you who don't know Charlie Kirk is like a kind of a conservative, libertarian, right-leaning guy who goes to college campuses.
Really?
And he calls himself libertarian, but
I'm sorry, Charlie, but no, man, you're pushing far right, dude. Like,
so he's a right wing. He's the primary person. I think, did he create Turning Point?
Yes.
He's the head of Turning Point USA. It's like a conservative political group that goes around and talks to people on college campuses with the idea of trying to spread conservative messages to younger people. Yeah. So essentially, right?
Well, actually, he just did, or at least I just saw a video the other day. And just so everybody knows, like, I'm not actually a big fan of the guy. I can respect the work he did to like build up his brand and build up his company, and he employs a lot of people. I don't necessarily agree with him for a lot of things. It's just a lot of that shit comes up on TikTok. But he was doing a video the other day, and somebody said something to him about how he got lucky, and he went, whoa. I built this from nothing. I'm the one who has put in most of the work. I'm the face of the company, and I employ X amount of people.
Yeah, with all
and
that
I reinvest
money
in
gets
these
donated
things.
from oil companies. And
Well, I mean, like even before there was a bunch of financial backing from like sponsors and stuff like that, like he was still
APAC.
doing this stuff, right? He was still doing all of it. And so I can respect his dedication to what he's doing, and I can respect the amount of work he put into it. Because yes, he goes to college campuses and essentially starts shit with people. I mean, he doesn't. I've had to watch a bunch of his the clips, and even when he disagrees with somebody, he doesn't seem to be inflammatory to be inflammatory.
he's kind of a jerk sometimes.
Kinda.
But the one who's worse is Steven Crowder.
Oh,
Steven
God.
Crowder is like a douche to people.
Oh my God.
So not only are usually whatever point he's making is fucking stupid, but
Yeah.
he doesn't know how to argue the point well.
No.
And so what he does is if somebody starts making a good point, he just talks over them
Yep.
and insults them.
Yeah.
So I don't have really any respect for Steven Crowder. He's a fucking joke.
Yeah, like Charlie Kirk is actually decently respectful to people. Like he says, this is my belief about certain things, and some people get really pissed off and offended by it. But he always says, "Thank you, good to meet you. How are you today?" And he is respectful of people, and even with like pronouns.
Yeah.
Like he has been respectful to people's pronouns, and when he slips up and somebody said that's not my pronoun, he's been like, I apologize, you know, it was they them, right? Okay, fine, I've got issues with that, but you know
Yeah,
what
I
mean?
think
Like,
my
there's
issue
still a
with
level of
they're
respect
both
he has.
they're both kind of condescending and sarcastic at times, which I think is
Sure.
harmful to the message they're trying. Anyway, that's not the point.
But anybody highly intelligent seems condescending to people who are not. And I think Charlie Kirk is a very intelligent guy. I think he's a very smart, well-read guy.
All right. So anyway,
Even though I don't agree with him. Yes.
you
sorry.
brought up a clip. You said some
Yeah,
college
yeah.
kid was arguing with him about free college.
Oh, yeah. So one of his stances is that college is a scam. And he's very adamant about it. He's very much against college. He doesn't necessarily say if nobody should go. He says, you know, if you want to go, fine, but just know that it's a scam. And somebody came up and said, you know, free college would help more people and more people would be educated. And he said the Republican standpoint of nothing's free. And the kid brought up that, you know, it should be free because then more people would have access and blah, blah, blah.
All right. So my point was, this is not really the greatest example because it's a college kid, but when you're having conversations with people who disagree with you politically, I think it's okay to just concede on certain points that aren't worth fighting. So if somebody says, I'm for free college, and they say, well, nothing's free, just say, yeah, of course, we pay for it with our tax dollars, but I think it's worth it to spend the money on that.
And I
like, there's
think
no need to argue about if something's free or not.
Well, I think ultimately that's really what people are arguing or posing that for, is because they're trying to say that they don't want to spend their tax dollars to put somebody else's kid in college.
Right.
I hear the same thing from people who say,
Right. So the argument is really that
my local or town taxes shouldn't go to people's, you know, high school and
Right.
elementary schools in my town.
So you're fighting what you're fighting over. That's my point. Is people kind of get lost in the weeds when they're trying to make a point or have discussions with each other, and it's like that's not the point. The point that you're trying to make is that I think it's worth it to spend that money to invest into the youth and for people to go to school. It's not over whether you think something should be free or not. It's that one group thinks that it isn't worth it to spend that money. The other group thinks it is worth it to spend that money.
Right.
And that's the same problem I have when it comes to some of the other political arguments that are going on, like people fighting about stuff regarding Trump. And the same thing, they get lost in the weeds about certain things. And it's like, I think that, for instance, controversial one, there's that Kilmar guy who got sent to El Salvador, who was deported. Do you know anything about it?
I know a little bit.
So
one side calls him MS-13 and one side doesn't.
So essentially,
or some shit like that.
He was deported, but he had like a court order saying that he couldn't be deported. And then the Supreme Court told the Trump administration that they're supposed to bring him back here because he wasn't deported through the proper channels, because he was supposedly had like a court order saying he couldn't be deported, and they deported him anyway. Anyway, to make a long story short, that's basically, you have people on the left arguing that he's an innocent sweet angel, and you have people on the right saying, no, he's affiliated with gang members. He beat his wife, because there's some video that came out from his wife talking about how he was abusive and all that stuff. I feel like all of that is irrelevant. Like arguing about whether he's a good or bad guy is not the point. Really the argument we should be having is about whether we should be deporting people without due process and whether we should just allow the Trump administration to just send people out of the country without going through the proper channels, while he's invoking some old law from
17 something or other.
Yeah.
1790.
It's like the alien foreign invader or something like that. It's but anyway, he's using that law, this old law, in order to say that it's like a national security thing. They need to send these people out.
Yeah.
But in the process, like that guy was obviously, they missed the fact that he was supposed to, he had a court order not allowing him to be deported for whatever reason.
Right.
And there's probably other mistakes they've made sending people out because they're not actually having any hearings. They're just sending people out, right?
Yeah.
That's where the real meat and potatoes of the argument is. And I'm not an expert on this particular situation. I've been reading a little bit about it here and there. So if I say something that's incorrect, like don't fucking shoot me.
No, they will. Don't worry. They will anyway.
I might be wrong about this, but I think that people are having the wrong argument. The argument isn't about whether this Kilmar guy is a good guy or a bad dude. That's irrelevant. The point is that we shouldn't just be sending people out without a hearing, and that people's constitutional rights are being violated. That's what the real problem is.
So I actually have to back that up one step further, because I think really the argument people are making is whether somebody who is a non-citizen has constitutional protection or not.
Well, that's what Trump is saying. Trump has specifically,
a lot of Republicans are saying that.
Trump has specifically said, "Well, I don't know if you have,
right."
According to the Constitution, anybody who is in the country has is guaranteed due process.
Okay.
Yeah, it doesn't specifically say that citizens. It's just anybody, all persons.
Okay.
You don't agree?
No.
Okay. So what do you believe the Constitution says?
I think the Constitution absolutely talks about citizenship, and it absolutely talks about the people, not just any physical body that's here. And I don't agree with all these people being deported. In fact, I don't give a shit if people come here or not. I don't care how they got here. Like, fucking give them a job. Fuck, I don't mind. I don't care about any of that.
So if the Trump administration is denying these people due process, what's to stop them from trying to do it to other people?
Well, I think the thing that stops it thus far is the fact that there is a delineation that they're making between citizen and non-citizen.
Yeah.
I think that's what stops them now.
But some of the people they're kicking out are people who are here illegally.
What?
Some of the people that they've kicked out were people who were here illegally.
Illegally?
No, legally.
Yes, legally. Yes, there were a couple
non-citizens who were kicked out,
like that woman, Harvard. She wrote some op-ed or some editorial piece, and they immediately revoked her fucking visa or some shit. Like Marco Rubio went on TV and said, "Well, we've revoked her visa." I mean, that's fucking bad, and I don't like that part.
I mean, I guess it is within the executive power for them to do that.
Yeah, it is. But apparently, I mean, I will say this much: like, when it comes to immigration, there needs to be more than just like fucking federal laws to say one way or the other, because obviously we're having too much of an argument about this. But I will say, like, people who say that the 14th Amendment due process, right? But the Constitution limits the government's power and gives and solidifies people's rights who are citizens, which is why they also had to make 2 amendments to recognize 2 other groups of people as citizens. Like, there was 2 amendments that had to be made to give women the right to vote, to abolish slavery, to give black people the right to vote. There had to be separate amendments for that because the Constitution itself defined who was a citizen in a very narrowed view. It gave us fucking rights, but even on that, the due process clause, the 14th Amendment, right? Like, the bill, people think the Bill of Rights was every citizen's right in the entire country from the second the Constitution was signed, and that is actually not true. So reading a little bit of history of that, like, that was not true so after the 14th Amendment, if a law was heard, sorry, I got to slow down a second. if a case was heard by the Supreme Court challenging something according to an amendment, then that Supreme Court decision would then give us the rights of it. And I know somebody's going to argue that shit. I got a fucking textbook that, I'll show you. And I've got a fucking government professor who can tell you otherwise. A lot of people think that the Second Amendment has always been every citizen's right from day one of the country. And that's actually not 100% true. I think it was 2010, the Baltimore case that came up, then actually that solidified the right.
Well, what you're saying, once it's challenged in court.
Yes, once it's challenged in court, and then it becomes our right. But most of the time, people just automatically say, a constitutional amendment, that's all there is to it, right? But the first 10 amendments were
because if a state, let's say that there's
because we had that dual federalist.
Use the Second Amendment as an example.
Yeah.
And let's say a state tried to ban firearms.
Right.
Well, then the federal government or somebody can sue the state for violating their rights, and that case could potentially go up to the Supreme Court.
Right.
The Supreme Court can say, well, no, you can't pass laws like that because that was actually what happened with Roe v. Wade, where they the decision, and I forget the one that was after Roe v. Wade, but there was two basically decisions that created the situation we had with abortion laws before the overturning of it.
Right.
Where basically states weren't allowed to pass. They were only allowed to pass certain restrictions up to a certain date, and if it was,
I think it was 24 weeks.
they couldn't pass. Yeah, they couldn't pass the restrictions that were under a certain amount of weeks or something.
Yeah.
I don't remember exact amount, but that was because it was the case went all the way up to the Supreme Court, and then
Yeah. And that, for everybody who's real pissed off about certain laws in certain states that are being enacted or at least up for vote right now, that's how our system works. Is they don't have to give a shit when they introduce a bill. They don't have to give a shit of whether it's constitutional or not. It's somebody else's job to challenge it, and then it goes to the Supreme Court. And once
there won't be anyone to challenge it once RFK puts us all in camps.
Oh, so
I'm kidding about that.
Oh, we'll talk about RFK in a minute.
I don't think he actually said anything about putting autistic people in camps. He did talk about health camps or something, though. Right?
Yeah, well, people automatically assume those two are connected. We can talk about that, Jazz, in a minute, because today's episode is about social issues.
Well, also, social issues, but also kind of like the way that we talk about them, the way that we discuss.
Right. That's the way what it's supposed to be about.
The way that we discuss and debate things. Whether you're I'm focusing on how do you change people's minds, and the way that you can convince other people is by being willing to admit when you're wrong or concede points for things that aren't worth fighting over, or that.
Hold on. So I think because what you just said about concede when you're wrong, I actually think that, and this is my own personal belief, which means I got nothing to back it up other than my own experience. I think that's part of the issue when it comes to talking about a lot of these social issues, when it comes to talking about politics, when it comes to talking about treatment of people even. I think part of the problem is everybody steps into the conversation with the absolutism belief they are right.
Well, I think that it's okay.
Opposed to having an opinion.
I think there's some things that you should be unwilling to concede on. It's just my point was when you're talking about the example we gave with the free college, there's no point in fighting over whether it's actually free or not. That's a dumb argument. The argument is I believe that we should spend the money, the tax money to
invest in people.
Right. That's the so when somebody says, "Well, nothing's free," yeah, you're right. Just concede that. It's you're right. Nothing's free.
Right.
Because now you're helping to it's going to be easier for you to build a bridge with somebody
a different way. Because you keep saying concede, and I know what you mean. And I know you don't mean it in necessarily a negative way, but people hear concede the argument, and they think what you're saying is you're backing down from
saying conceding the point. It's not a point worth fighting over.
Yeah. So maybe instead of saying we concede the point, maybe instead we bypass their argument and get to the crux of what it is we're actually talking about.
Whatever you want to call it. I'm just saying that.
Well, words are important.
Because it's not worth fighting on certain topics. Like if you, there's a lot of things that people argue about that are hot political topics right now. And what I get frustrated with sometimes is when I see people arguing on the internet or on videos or debates online, whatever. When people are talking about things, they get caught up in arguing over things that don't really matter at the end of the day, because you're not focusing on what you're not focusing on the actual core of what your arguments or disagreements are.
I'm going to say this again. Doesn't matter to who.
It doesn't matter. Okay, so when I say that, I mean it's not productive conversation because
to who?
It's not a productive.
I'm asking this question on purpose, dude.
All right. If your goal is just to get, if your goal is simply to get views or make money or dunk on people, then sure, if that's your goal, then maybe it's productive that way. But it's not productive for the citizens of this country and for our political discourse. It's not productive in that way. If you actually want to change things politically, change people's minds, that's not productive because you're not actually getting into a deep argument about the core beliefs or the points.
Well,
like what point are you trying to make? Why do you believe college should be free? What those are the conversations worth having, not
I think,
it's not free.
I think some of the extremism in our speech has actually drastically affected our ability to have a conversation. Because you just said change people's minds, change things politically, argue.
Yeah.
I think people need to stop focusing on trying to argue. I think they need to focus more on having a conversation, a conveyance of ideas.
I don't want to get deep into this particular conversation at the moment, but there's another one where these type of conversations happen all the time, and it's surrounding any of the trans issues.
Yeah.
There's all these little arguments people are having back and forth about trans stuff, and they miss the entire if you were to boil down to what, let's say somebody on the right wing, what their problem or issue is with it, and the same thing for people on the left or people who support trans people, they never actually address their core beliefs or core arguments. It's all this surface level shit they're fighting over that doesn't, neither side is actually gaining any ground anywhere or actually making any progress to meeting in the middle. It's just fighting over surface level arguments. Like when I see people online just saying you'll see something about a trans person and the person uses the incorrect pronouns on purpose to insult the person. Or they say that's a man or whatever. They're saying ignorant shit.
Whatever way to get a rise out of somebody.
But people do that shit when they actually have real conversations. It's more about inciting or trolling people rather than actually having conversations or addressing if you actually want to let's say you are somebody who's anti-trans stuff, right? Yeah. How is it productive to just sit there and make fun of trans people or say that they're mentally ill versus actually trying to understand the other side and having a conversation about why they believe what they believe? If you honestly think that it's not...
They're not trying to be productive, Steve, and that's part of the problem, is people on the right and the left are not trying to be productive anymore. Nobody is trying to understand. They're trying to be loud and angry. They're trying to shut people up.
But I think that for people who are more... I'm socially very liberal. My views are... When it comes to social issues, I'm pretty liberal, left leaning on a lot of things. And then I'm a little more libertarian when it comes to some of the government stuff. I worry about government power and people abusing their authority and et cetera, which is a good example, what's going on with Trump right now. Right. Yeah. That's why people who lean libertarian are afraid of people abusing their power. But I think that if Democrats or left leaning people want to win more votes, they need to be willing to have to have the types of conversations where you're not jumping down people's throats, especially when you're talking within our own circles. We've had many conversations between us and other people talking about tone policing and lateral punching and beating each other up, and that's not gonna help us actually do anything.
But none of these people who are doing those things want to be productive. They don't want to move anything forward. They claim to be activists and advocates, but all they really want is attention for themselves, which is why when they talk about it, you hear them talk about the impact it had on them. They talk about how other people are affected by it. Here's how I know they are, because I really think that I think people forgot how to have a conversation. I think one of the things that I'll say is a downside to the internet. I'm going to try to ignore you, but you know full well that I just read shit randomly on screens.
I was trying to pull up something that's that's towards what you're talking about.
I think the one downside to social media, to us having greater access to information, is instead of having a conversation with somebody where we as humans can be wrong, instead we're all trying to be the smartest asshole in the room. And I can tell you from doing 20 some odd, almost 40 years. No, wait, how old am I? Oh yeah. 20 some odd years of being an adult in America and doing that kind of behavior, it doesn't get you anywhere. In fact, it keeps you personally in a space where you yourself are constantly trying to find a place to give out the information you learned.
So here's an
And
example.
so-
Sorry, not to interrupt you.
Yeah, you're good. You found your
I
example.
was going to say this is an example of what I mean. So people say these like absolutist statements, right? And things are very rigid. This person might be autistic. I have no idea. This is a tattoo of a black man, and he has a rope tied around his finger, and then there's a person with a KKK hood hanging from it. Right?
Yeah. And there's a
And
little blood pool at the bottom of it too.
it's not the tattoo. It's what the person said that I think is stupid.
Okay.
If this
I was about to
upsets
say.
you, you're racist. If you think it's cringe, you're racist. And I do think it's cringe, but I don't think that me thinking it cringe makes me racist. I just think that it's like, I'm not against the tattoo, but I do think it's kind of
Okay. You're actually bringing up something. There is a phrase that floats around. If you're not with us, you're against us.
yeah.
Even those who don't choose a side are against us. You know, that kind of mentality actually causes bad fucking thinking. And it galvanizes people in trying to prove how much of an ally they are.
Like, do
Trying
you
to
think that this
prove how much they
tattoo is
believe in it.
cringe?
Do I believe so?
Yeah.
I do, but not because it's a KKK guy being hung, because they did a lot of that to the
Yeah,
person
it's
who
not
has
the
that
image
tattooed
itself.
on
I
them.
just think that like, I just like, I don't understand why
So-
somebody would tattoo something like that on their hand.
Well, I mean, he feels that passionately against racism, I guess. But my question would not be, why did you get that tattooed on you? Because you got to deal with the consequences of having that tattooed on you. My problem with it is, the person literally put it to make sure every time he gives somebody the finger, that's what he's showing them, because it's actually done upside down on his hand.
Yeah.
So it's purposely done so he could give the finger to people. And then he put it on the internet, which makes me think, did you do all of that just for attention?
Well, it could be maybe that if somebody's being a racist towards them, we can flip them off and show them that.
Sure.
But
he's also giving the finger
I
and
just
showing
think
that
that-
tattoo to people,
I would
to
think-
other people he's pissed at.
I think anything that depicts any sort of violence is kind of cringe. Like,
well, I do too.
so it's not because it's a person KKK. It's just
Yeah.
because it's a person hanging with blood, even though
Right.
the person being hung.
Right.
Like if it was a Nazi being killed or something, or anything. It's just like,
Right.
I just think it's kind of like, I'm not saying it's bad. It's not. Who cares about my opinion? I don't fucking like.
How
It's
about the
it's a
phrase
tattoo.
violence beget violence?
If he likes
or
it-
begets violence.
If he likes the tattoo,
Yeah.
cool. Who gives a shit?
Yeah.
I'm just saying, if you asked my personal opinion, I do think it's a little cringe. But
Well-
how does that make me racist for thinking it's a little cringe?
Well, because if you're not with us, you're against us, Steve.
But that's my point, is that some of these things that people say that are just like so absolutist,
Uh-huh.
I don't like that.
Well, I don't like absolutism either, because some of that absolutism, it actually it makes what you're against, you become what you're against. If you are so hardened and so rigid that you can't see the human being behind the idea, then you are just like the people who cannot see past can't see the human past the idea.
Yeah.
So like Nazis hated Jews, or Jewish people of the Jewish faith, or Jewish people, hated Jewish people.
Well, actually,
Because-
so not to play that game on you.
You
would
can
s-
play it. I'm just trying to use it as an
Well,
analogy here.
I would just clarify to say it didn't matter if they were religiously Jewish or not. It was ethnically Jewish. But
Yeah, whatever.
because if you
Either
didn't
way.
actually practice the religion, they're not going to say, "Oh, well, you get a pass."
Yeah. So either way, Nazis hated a lot of people.
Yeah.
And one of the reasons why they hated a lot of people was because somebody took real information and twisted it and said, this is the reason why you feel pain.
So I know.
And people got galvanized by it. And you can call it propaganda if you want. And you could call it a lot of things, that he misled the truth, that whatever the hell. But he convinced a bunch of people to hate somebody, hate a group of people. Okay. And then in turn, Jewish people hated Nazis. But every time somebody does anything that reminds somebody of similar to that, except for you hating somebody for hating something, is doing the exact same thing to them. Now, by the way, I'm not trying to support Nazis in any way, shape, or form. I think they're fucking horrible people, and even neo-Nazis are fucking horrible. I'm just trying to use it as an example Kind of like somebody said, if you have Republican family members and you haven't gotten rid of them, I won't be friends with you anymore. That's stupid. You're literally saying that you're going to stop being a friends of a Democrat because or friends of a liberal because they have family members that they're still willing to talk to who are Republican or conservative. That is stupid. That is that kind of idea of either you're with us or against us. There's also a middle ground to it. Because how about I don't agree with either fucking one of you, or at least I don't agree with your level of extremism on it, absolutism on it. I want to find a middle. And there is a middle to some of this stuff. Like, for one, when it comes to certain social issues, okay, using, what is it, hyperbolic language?
Hyperbole?
Or hyperbole. Using the extremism language of, they're trying to get rid of us. Okay. Who tried to put up a bill that said, kill all the LGBT people? Nobody. Because they'd be hunting me. But nobody put up that bill. Nobody has put up a bill that said it's illegal to be XYZ. In fact, we got rid of those laws. And sure, it seems like we might be backsliding and going in that direction, but nobody has put that up yet. And so by saying, fuck those people, that's where they're going, that's what they're doing. You know what? You know, we're talking taboo subjects a little bit and like controversial stuff. So I'm going to bring up one from our community.
I was just going to say that I think a lot of what you're talking about is more so with trans issues right now. Like I was doing the whole LGBT.
Not that
there's a bunch of like, not that there's not a bunch of homophobia and stuff out there, but I see like most of the backsliding stuff that I see is more so there's like the people who are worried about being erased and all that stuff. It's more about all the hatred and the shitty way that people are acting towards trans people. So like trans people afraid to be out in public in certain areas because of how, and I see the way that people react to just even like a picture of a trans woman and they fucking freak out. And it's like, dude, who cares? They're not like, they're not hurting you. Yeah. Are you so afraid? Are you slightly attracted to them and now you're worried that you're gay? Like, what's the point?
Can somebody who listens to our show, can you explain to me at what point in the last 20 years did we stop differentiating between female and woman and male and man? Because that used to be like 20 years ago when I first started hearing this stuff. That was there was a difference between the two, and somehow we don't talk about that anymore. Somehow that's not part of the conversation, and people are like, what's a real woman? Well, it's a social construct of behaviors that we all identify as being to a woman. That's all it is, in my opinion. But we don't talk about the separation of the two of those. And instead, it's only about man and woman, and like, those are fucking socially derived. Anyway, no, I was going to bring up when people talk about eugenics for the autism community. Okay. I think it ties into this because I actually just saw a video on TikTok this morning where a person said that if you agree with profound autism, or if you agree with doing more research on autistic people, then you support eugenics and I'm going to stop being friends with you. Which, by the way, I don't see the connection between the two of those, but it's the amount of times I see creators on different social media or I read a post on different social media that talks about eugenics against autistic people. And every time I see that, they're talking about some senator or RFK for that matter, or somebody talking about getting rid of. And here's the thing. Are there people who honestly want to help stop people from getting autism? Yes, there are. And those people are drastically affected by it. I don't think RFK is drastically affected by it. I think he's using this as a way to fucking, I don't know, get money, stay famous, whatever the fuck. But are there people who wish their loved one didn't have to deal with autism on a regular basis? Yes, there are. And like, I'm not going to deny that those people fucking exist, and I'm not going to fault them for it because they deal with very stressful shit and they watch somebody they love who has to deal with some shit. And it's not because society sucks. It's also because like they have a condition, a difference about them that makes life fucking drastically harder. Just existence for them is drastically harder. So I get why they would want to try to find a cure, why they're desperate to find help. And I understand the point on the other side of that, which is usually low support need, medium to low support need folks who are just like, no, we can't get rid of it. No. Like, but you got to see it on both sides of it. And by saying things like, if you support eugenics, nobody actually fucking supports eugenics now. Nobody fucking, well, maybe in another country, but nobody in the United States. Oh, yeah, except for the amount of people who have told me, backstory. I voted for Thanos for 2 different presidential elections. We can call it a joke if you want. But I've actually had people say, well, you know which 50% I'd get rid of. What the fuck? You clearly don't understand the point about why I voted for Thanos. But they immediately say there's one group of people, a 50% group of people they would get rid of, and it's usually the opposite political party, right? But it's that idea. Like, to me, that's a small example of what we're talking about. And that's kind of what I'm talking about for the eugenics thing. Am I making myself clear? Mostly?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Mostly. I just have a problem with...
I say if you snap away all the Republicans, we'd probably die of starvation, because I would imagine a lot of the Midwestern farmers are probably more conservative.
They are.
So we would lose all our food crop.
Yeah, well, I don't know a lot of liberals who are pretty good at fucking farming. I said I don't know a lot. I also don't know a lot of farmers.
I'm sure there's liberal farmers.
There's probably one or two.
And just the stereotype of the Midwestern farmer is like kind of conservative.
Well, that's probably true.
Rural guy.
Yeah. Who loves his Jesus and growing some corn or some shit. Yeah, I get the stereotype.
I was going to ask you a question a few minutes ago, but I was letting you kind of go on.
Yeah. I'm sorry. I was trying to get somewhere with the eugenics thing, but I'm also trying to be a little bit cautious because, look, I don't support eugenics in any way. I don't support extremism groups, and I also think
just own it, Nick.
That the far left and the far right are becoming exactly that, extremist groups, and they're spouting rhetoric that does not help anyone.
Well, the problem right now. So yes, but I don't think that we want to equivocate there, because I think that the right is much more of it.
Want to what?
Equivocate. I don't think that. Yeah, I don't think that the extreme right is much more of a problem right now than the left. Does the left
really?
I think the extreme left people are just annoying sometimes, whereas I think that the right wing, because they have political power right now, and that the majority of the Republican Party is, even if they're not extreme right, the majority of the Republican Party is complicit with the more radical right people within the party and the administration, and I don't approve of a lot of the stuff that they're doing.
So that professor I brought up at the beginning of all this, he actually drew a circle a mostly circle, but it was broken at the very top. And he said that the extremism on both sides are up at the top. And they're so uniformly similar to one another. And he said that's a problem because both sides are growing. Both sides of the extremes are growing in numbers and growing in power. I think both the left and the right, far left and right, are bad.
I gotta show you a video after we stop recording. There was somebody who did a sketch about what you're talking about.
Oh, really?
It's a joke where they have an extreme right and an extreme left-wing person, and they become best friends. But
okay. So what was your question?
So you might know more about me when it comes to like people like Nietzsche and like the kind of like the late 19th century thinkers and all that,
Sure.
Before basically pre-World War II, pre-World War I, pre-World War II, kind of the philosophy and stuff that was going on, the time of like Nietzsche and then Freud and those other people.
Yeah, sure.
And kind of like some of the, I guess, nihilism that was going on at the time. Do you think that we're kind of repeating some of the bad things that happened during the 20th century? Do you think that we're like kind of on the way to repeat some of those things? Because it seems like a lot of the maybe I'm oversimplifying things, but it seems like some of the philosophies that drove some of the terrible things that happened in the 20th century, it seems like we're repeating some of those same mistakes as far as like the extremist thinking and the ideology and the ideologies that like these people who are more some of the left-wing people and some of the more right-wing people and the extremist ideology, it seems like it seems similar to me to some of the philosophical underpinnings of the 20th century, like the stuff that happened in the early and mid 20th century.
I think absolutely we're repeating because I think we're absolutely repeating the philosophies, we're repeating the ideologies, we're absolutely repeating the treatment of people because we gain ground and then we take a step back. And then we gain some ground and we take a step back because it's people. I think the thinking has not actually changed. I think the topics of the thinking changed, but I don't think the way we actually think about certain things hasn't changed at all.
I mean, because people are still basically espousing Marxist rhetoric and justifying some of their right wing ideas with they're justifying some of their right wing ideology with Nietzschean ideas, right?
Yeah.
But what's interesting to me is like I'm not a religious person, right? You kind of are.
I am.
But it does seem like when people lack religion or when a society lacks religion, when you have a nihilist type of society, and I think that the United States is still very Christian, but I think that it seems to me like the people who are on the extreme ends are a-religious, or at least if they pretend to be religious, but I don't think they actually are. It seems like their ideology is their religion.
Mm-hmm. I think it's gotten to that point because people need something to believe in. And I'm not saying just religion, but people need to have faith in something other than themselves. People need to have faith in family. They need to have faith in what they're doing for a living, whatever it is. But people need to have faith and they need to believe in something. And when we lack that purpose, that faith, that belief in something, I honestly believe that people have tendency to go down a wrong path. Now, you can believe in a religion or don't believe in a religion. You can believe in like Taoism, a way of life. You can do whatever it is you want to do in that regard, but have something to truly actually believe in. And social issues and correcting social issues is clearly not working for people as something to believe in and do something and having a purpose of. It's all it's doing is causing people to be super pissed off and pissing off somebody else. I think that I think one of the problems that has perpetuated from that time period, so from 100 years ago to now, one of the problems is there's always somebody yelling and screaming that their group is being mistreated. And then they in turn treat somebody else's group or treat a different group like shit, whether it's because they're blaming them for the treatment on them, or they're saying that this other group doesn't need it because we need it, or they're saying, yeah, you got issues too, but my issues are more pressing because my issues have been going on longer, or because we've been treated worse. Unfortunately, because people are what people are, humans have tendency to shit on somebody else, period. And I think that's why a lot of the issues continue to perpetuate. So we made strides for civil rights, and then we turned around and somebody's shitting on somebody else, and then somebody's shitting on somebody else, right? And every time we make strides for somebody to get quote unquote equal treatment, somebody else then steps up immediately and says, "Oh, but what about me?" And I'm not saying we don't look at people who are underserved or oppressed or minorities in the community, or people who are overlooked, however you want to word that. I'm not saying we don't look at those people and we don't help those people. What I'm saying, though, is in our fight for equality, in our fight to get equal rights for everybody or being treated equal under the law, we can't shit on somebody in the process. So specifically, and it's kind of the to lead into part of our previous conversation of why a lot of young white men or younger men are kind of going more right and becoming more galvanized in that direction. I think it's because somebody found a villain, and yes, that person historically looked like the person who caused a lot of problems in this country, but to vilify the person now for what was once, and not even necessarily done to you, but the person who was once that, you're shitting on somebody else, and that is causing them to then in turn have dislike, disdain, resentment, bitterness towards your group. And so then we again have this back and forth where nobody's willing to listen to each other because one group says it's your fault, the other group says it's not my fucking fault, I didn't do anything to you, and vice versa. So everybody becomes a fucking victim. Everybody.
Yeah. I would say that
I'm just throwing that in there because, like, in my estimation, every time I hear somebody make a general statement about any demographic, any group of people, any labeled group of people, they make a generalized, snap, fucking shitty, ignorant statement about somebody. I think you do nothing to help your own cause in doing so. And I think you do nothing but hurt yourself in the process. As an example, there's a lady who goes on live on TikTok quite often. Like, I think it's her fucking job at this point. But she goes on quite often. And all she ever does is put up a phrase behind her shitting on men in some way or another. And if you listen to the way she talks, and she's like British or something, if you listen to the way she talks about men, she's clearly been hurt by a man or even multiple men in her life, but that doesn't mean shit on all. And like,
that was a difficult lesson that I had to learn.
What?
I had a lot of bad experiences with girls and women when I was younger.
Yeah.
Part of that may have been due to me being undiagnosed as a teenager and stuff. So I had a lot of really bad social interactions or times where I was, I felt mistreated or I felt like, I felt like I was treated poorly or heartbroken over things. And so like I started to develop some of that bitterness for a while where I was like, I went through a period of time where I tried to distance myself from women in general. Like I would purposely try not to date or meet women. If a woman was interested in me, I would try to just ignore her or do something else because I just felt like there was no positive that could come from me getting close to a woman. I did have some misogynist feelings at that time because of that bitterness I had, but I didn't go around and like talk shit about women openly all the time. It's like women are shit and women are this and that.
Right.
But yeah, I felt some of that because of the hurt that was in me.
Right.
But it took time for me to heal and get over that and realize that it wasn't just that, yes, there are plenty of shitty women out there. There are plenty of shitty human beings in general. And that I also had to realize that some of the blame was on me because of the type of people that I was surrounding myself with and the type of women that I was talking to or attracting. So, and I would say the same thing. I know a lot of women don't like to hear this, but if you constantly date shitty men, the common denominator is you. It doesn't mean that those men aren't shitty. It just means that maybe you're surrounding yourself with the wrong types of guys. Right. Or maybe you shouldn't, maybe you're picking up men in an area that's not a good place to meet a man. Yeah. Or same thing with me. Like if I'm going to a bar and picking up women at the bar, that's probably not the best place to meet a girl. That's
if you go to a kink party, that's probably not the place where you're meeting your spouse.
You never know.
No.
There's plenty of people who have healthy sexual relationships like that.
What I'm saying about that, though, is you should not be walking in the door with the thought of, I could meet the love of my life here. That should not be your thought process.
I think I should also specify for any women or feminists who are listening that I will concede that there's probably a lot more.
I was also about to put some nuance on this.
I was going to say there are probably a lot more violent or shitty men out there. Mm-hmm. And I think that there's probably an equal number of men and women who are shitty people in general. Mm-hmm. It's just that you, as a woman, you should probably fear shitty men more than I would fear a shitty woman, for physically anyway.
That's guaranteed.
Like, a lot of my hurt was more emotional. And the way that women tend to try to hurt people, if they're shitty, it's more manipulative or emotional or like making you feel like shit about yourself. Whereas like if a guy is violent, if it's physical, then obviously that's something different. It's a different type of. But I'm just saying a lot of my hurt was because of women who did things that really hurt me on an emotional level.
Well, I also want to put this out there too, because I agree with the statement you made. Yeah. Common denominator, right? I want to make sure somebody understands, because I know full well there's going to be some asshole who gets pissy to get pissy and not understand what he said. If he's not talking about women who have been in abusive relationships, he's not saying it's your fault. He's not saying that if you were in an abusive family or an abusive friendship or toxic, he's not saying it's your fault in that regard. But if you have 3 or 4 shitty relationships that didn't go very well and like fucking brought you down in life, you might want to take a look at what you evaluate as far as traits or positive traits in a guy.
Or what criteria are you looking at?
Yeah, I'd also say that to men too. Like any human being who's seeking a partner, you need to make sure your criteria for that partner that you're looking for is correct. And what I say by correct, that doesn't mean I know the best. What I mean by that is you have to find somebody that matches what and who you are or how you want your life to be. And the problem is sometimes we look at and we get in a place in our life where we're viewing ourselves, I should say, in a place in our life where we're not holding ourselves with enough value. And so when the pretty guy or girl come along, or the pretty non-binary person, or the pretty, am I covering all my bases here? When the pretty person come along and we go, oh, you're giving me attention, we kind of lose sight of the criteria we gave for ourselves.
Yeah, people get I forget what they call it, there's a term for it, but you get kind of a blindness.
Yeah.
And you don't notice all the red flags, like things that, and by red flags, I don't just mean like red flags as in like this person could be potentially hurtful or violent. I just mean red flags like this person's not compatible with me.
Right.
Things that you know won't work for you long term,
Yeah.
but you ignore them because the person is attractive,
Yeah.
or you're getting attention, like you're saying, especially if you've gone through a period where you were feeling kind of down about yourself and depressed, and all of a sudden someone attractive is interested in you, and you ignore all of the negative things or things that aren't compatible or red flags, and you're just like, that's how I got myself into trouble. Is
I have too. I dated some of the wrong people too.
Anytime a pretty girl was nice to me, and then I would jump into a relationship with a girl that wouldn't work out.
Yep.
And then I would get hurt, and then that led me down a path of just kind of like, well, fuck women for a while. And then I got over it.
Oh, I never got into that headspace.
I got to where I just wanted nothing to do with women for a while.
Yeah.
So what you were saying about men, though, because I was trying to respond to that.
Oh,
the young men thing.
Yeah.
So we mentioned this before when we went to get coffee. I was just saying that I think that's so people on the left, in the more liberal, left-leaning spaces, I think they need more positive male role models. And what I mean by that is you had
prop up more
positive
male role models.
That a lot of the young men who are more right-leaning and they leaned on people like Andrew Tate or like Jordan Peterson and people like that. It's because they don't have people like that on the left who are speaking directly toward young men. Right. And there's kind of there is kind of an attitude where, well, young men have had enough attention. They don't need any.
No.
On the left.
Yeah. Hold
but I think that it would benefit left-leaning spaces politically and social movements. They would benefit from having young men on their side. Why push them away or kind of ostracize them? And then, some of them may end up radicalizing on the right and et cetera. Why not bring them into your circle?
Yeah. Why not make them feel included, liberals? I say it that way because I find the entire Democrat Party so hypocritical that you guys yell and scream about inclusion, and yet you push out a group of people that got the right voted into office. And somebody's going to argue that fucking point. Yes, they fucking contributed.
Well, there's some people that may be beyond hope, at least now, but I think that there's a lot of young, impressionable people that you can bring into your fold if you just took a little bit of time to
how about not vilify? Okay, so for one, and I want to point this out, a lot of young white men have gone to the right and have continually pushed into the right direction because they're being vilified for shit they didn't do. And also they're being vilified for things they've done, but look at how they were taught. And so you might say that's not my fault. You're right. But it is your fault that you, instead of understanding them, you pushed them away. You spouted and yelled your rhetoric of their voice doesn't matter. Like when we started this podcast, people said, who needs to hear another white man's opinion? Because you didn't look at me as a human being. You didn't look at me as an individual. You just said, I don't need to hear another white man. The problem with that is you're generalizing everyone and no longer looking at the individual. And I think that's a major problem with the left currently, is they want to have a villain. They don't want individuals. They want to, what are the two sides? The communism, two sides, Marxist, two sides, the people versus the
oppressor versus oppressed.
Yeah, great. I was looking for the other terms for that, but bourgeoisie, proletariat. Those were the two words.
Okay.
Yeah. So, like he said, one was,
well, I mean, the way
side
that
or the other. But I'm using it as an analogy.
The way that like Marxists nowadays look at things is like the lens of oppressor versus oppressed. There always has to be.
Well, yeah, that's what he meant by it
oppressor
too.
class versus the oppressed class.
So,
and I think that is important to take into those things into account. But it's like we mentioned before, you can't view everything through the same lens. When you're looking at different things, you should look at things like through a toolkit, right? It's like there are some times to use that lens, and there are other times not to.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I was trying to get at, like, people on the left found a villain and said, you're the reason why I feel the way I feel. No, most of them were not. Now, the old white men, maybe, and they did some things.
What are you talking about? I was oppressing people in 1986 when I was a zygote.
Yeah, exactly. Well, that's kind of my point of it, is when you say all white men are bad.
We are.
Okay, let's just make jokes in the middle of it. Cool. Next topic point.
Well, I wasn't being serious, but I could make the argument as to why all white men are bad.
Go for it. Oh, and more specifically, I want you to explain why each and every one of them, of the 4 billion on the planet, are bad.
You can't.
Every single one of them.
You have to generalize, because you can't.
That's my point exactly behind what I'm trying to say, or where I was going with it, or what I was trying to say, is that's the problem with the left currently. And the problem with the right is they want things to stay a certain way. And you can call them all racist if you want, but you're doing exactly the problem of why they don't want change. Because no human being likes change. Being autistic, we don't like change. We're not great with change. So we can understand other people's points of view, but we're refusing to. And I think the left is becoming just as bad as they claim the right is. And they say at times that they are inclusive and they want diversity, but they don't actually want diverse thought. They don't really want diverse thought. They only want what they can promote as diverse thought. Because every single human being has a different perspective. Every single human being has a different point of view. And when you cut yourself off from learning about another individual's experience in their life, you're cutting yourself off from learning better and understanding humans better, but you're also stopping them from speaking, which means the next person who does allow them to speak or does validate their opinion, that person is going to get their support, which is why I think there's a lot of people who went to the right.
I have 2 follow-up questions for you.
Please.
One, and these are kind of rhetorical questions to try to these are questions to try to get to, I guess, a deeper level. One is, how would you define what a good person is? Like, what makes a person good? Because when you're saying like, oh, X person is the villain or bad, X group is good. Yeah. What makes a person good or bad? What criteria are we judging them on that? Mm-hmm. And then the second part would be, were there any good people in the Nazis? Were there good Nazis? Because there were a whole group of people. Were there any good ones? Were there any good people who were part of the regime?
Didn't you read Man's Search for Meaning?
Yeah.
Victor Frankl?
Yeah. So
then you know the answer to that question.
Yeah, but I'm asking you.
Okay.
Also, Anne Frank.
You know, I saw the stupidest meme.
Well, because Anne Frank was a pacifist.
Yeah.
and she tried to see the good in the Nazi people.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. Do I think that there were good people who were part of the Nazi army? I think there were probably people who started out with good hearts in them, trying to treat people decently, but they had to do a job. And I know somebody's going to call me a sympathizer for that fucking one. You know what? Read Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl. And he wrote down and wrote a book all about his observations of being in a concentration camp.
Firsthand.
Yeah, firsthand account. And he talks about the soldiers. He talks about the prison guards at one of the concentration camps. I don't remember which one. He talks about who they were as people and their reactions to things and his impressions of things. So go read that book and then go answer that question for yourself.
But the other part was what defined, because I have a reason for asking.
Defines the good person. I can do that.
I have a reason for asking you that question.
Yeah, I know. You're leading, and I'm going to let you lead because, sometimes it's okay to let the other person lead. But when it comes to the criteria of good, I don't think anybody has a right to tell anybody else what the criteria for good and bad is. But I do think that our criteria needs to not be a moral judgment of the human, but more of the decisions they're making. So you can make a good decision and a bad decision. You can have smart and ignorant fucking thoughts or beliefs. I don't believe the human being, the individual, is good or bad, regardless of what they do.
I think it's hard to quantify.
That's what I'm trying to say.
Because what criteria determines, like, how many good things does a person have to do, and what defines what a good thing is? Because some people would say, like, the British Empire, right?
Mm-hmm.
The British Empire did a bunch of horrible shit too.
Mm-hmm.
Does that mean that everybody who lived in the British Empire was a bad person? Does that mean that everybody who was in the British Army was a bad person?
Right.
Were any of them good, even if they tried to live as good people, if they tried to be kind, compassionate, and caring, but they were still part of an oppressive government? They were still part of an oppressive empire. Does that mean that they were all bad inherently because they were part of that? Which is what the Nazi question was about. It's were they all inherently bad people just because they were complicit in a horrible regime?
Yeah. I mean, I have no idea if this is a true statement or not, but I'm assuming there was a people who worked in the mail service in England during their imperialism period of time. And I'm pretty sure the guy sorting the mail, or the lady sorting the mail, okay, had nothing to do with the horrible treatment that somebody did in some other country. I'm assuming in Germany, there was somebody sorting the mail who never shot anybody, never killed anybody, but needed to pay for food for his family or grandkids, or just put a roof over his own fucking head.
What people would argue is that all of those people, regardless if they actually contributed directly,
because
they all
complicit in it.
They all benefited from
You're
the
absolutely
British
right.
Empire.
You're absolutely right. They benefited from it.
Because it was a rich empire.
Just like you benefit from the capitalist system that you fucking hate.
Or you benefit from slave labor in China.
Or slave labor in China. Here's my thing by vilifying all of them.
The Portuguese and the slave trade.
Yeah. Yeah. Thanks, guys. Not really thanks. But my problem with vilifying every single person who was in it, even the people who had to do it because it was the best paying thing possible. People need to pay for things. They need to get food. They need to take care of their families. And to say, fuck you for delivering the mail, like... I'm so
actually,
borderline being I'm like borderline almost like
what you're saying
called a sympathizer.
Reminded me of
not every
a joke.
fucking person who was in the Nazi army was a horrible human being. And yes, they did support the army because they did whatever job it was. But there was a lot of people who had to serve in that army, who had to support the fucking things that army was doing because they had no other fucking choice. And I'm not going to say every one of them need to burn in hell, period, because that's not the reality of it. And it's also, sorry, but my faith tells me it's also not my place to judge. And
I was
I'm
gonna
not
s-
going to judge.
I was gonna say it reminds me of a meme. It was kind of a joke.
Yeah.
You know those like the little golden books. Remember those? The
Yeah.
kids books, the little
Yeah,
golden
yeah.
books. There was a picture, and it's a little golden book, and it's
Mm-hmm.
a picture of Hitler in pajamas, and he's riding on a magic carpet. And it said like everyone who disagrees with me politically is Hitler. A child's guide to political discourse.
Do I think what they did overall was bad? Fuck yeah. But am I going to vilify every single one of the people? No. I'm like anybody who served in the military and did bad things in the name of, I think we should fucking punish. But like,
Or people don't talk about all the horrible stuff the Japanese military did,
no, I know.
like in China
I
and
know.
stuff.
Like, you know what? Every country has a bad history somewhere in it. Like every country.
Japanese imperialism was pretty bad.
Yeah,
Like
every
they did
continent,
really
bad juju.
horrible stuff to all of the
Right.
the islands and the territories they took
Yeah.
over.
I actually saw a video of somebody who said that the world was so much better before white people left Europe, and like, no, there's no evidence to support that. Like,
Well, better in what way?
well, they tried to say that there was less war, that there was no slavery, there was like, and none of this is true, by the way.
Well,
none of it's true.
The scale and size of war has grown.
Yeah,
because,
but that's just more people,
well, yeah, that's what I. Well, I
and
mean,
it's easier
there was,
for us to get at each other.
there was
now.
there was war and skirmishes
Yeah.
and violence, but it was smaller groups of fighting smaller groups rather than
Right.
large scale war like World War I and World War II. The world had never had war on that scale before,
Right. Well, because they weren't capable of having war on that scale before.
Because I mean,
Right.
you know,
Like,
all the native tribes here and in Central America constantly fought with each other. Europeans fought with each other
Right.
forever.
and they captured people and they sold people. Like, fuck off. And that's a general statement. So, like, everybody's going to cite an example, or some people are going to cite an example of like a fucking tribe that didn't do that shit. Hey, great. One
The
or two
Taino?
didn't. Sure.
Supposedly, I don't know a ton about the history, but the Taino were the native people in Puerto Rico, and they're supposedly
Yeah.
very peaceful, nonviolent. They didn't even have weapons, which is why
Okay.
it was so easy for Columbus to just take over because
Right.
they didn't
And
even
there
have
were-
weapons.
There were some that were awesome in the world, but yet we don't cite those examples of that's how we should live as people.
The problem with a lot of those happy utopia type societies is they
I don't think they can survive.
they couldn't really defend themselves.
Well, they couldn't. Yeah. I also don't think that they can survive long term because it's in human nature to be greedy. It's in human nature to feel bitter and resentful towards somebody else who's gotten a little bit more than we have. It's
So what you're saying is you don't think that human beings are capable of living in a communist utopia?
no, I don't believe it's fucking possible in any way, shape, or form. Whether you want to believe that communism has happened in the world or not, like I don't believe it could exist the way it's written out to be, the way anybody thinks it can be. I don't think it can happen that way.
So what if we
Yeah,
had a Star Trek type utopian society? Do you still think that
Well,
there
I
would
don't
be too
think that's
much?
actually possible.
Do you think that there would still be too much? People would have ambition
Yes.
and greed and not be able to just
Yes.
settle for what they have.
Yes. Here's an example. Okay. This is probably the most minor of fucking examples. Okay. And somebody's going to be like, that didn't mean shit. It does. Okay. Look at lives. Okay. On TikTok, look at lives. You give somebody the power to control who can and cannot talk, and people get real shitty real quick about what is allowed to be said and what is not allowed to be said. And somebody might argue, well, yeah, if you let up the wrong person and they say the wrong thing, your whole life gets taken down. You're right. You have pressure from your overlord that you need to control things a certain way. You're absolutely right. But the second we put power in somebody's hand, they fucking abuse it.
Stanford prison experiment.
Yes. Like,
What was the other one? The one with the shocks or something?
the shock treatment thing.
People
Yeah.
being told to do something and they just went along with it
Yeah.
even if they thought they were because somebody was telling them to do it.
Because they could pass responsibility off onto somebody else.
I
well,
think-
he told me to do it.
Well, the power thing, right?
Yeah, it's
Like the
about power.
Stanford prison experiment.
Yeah.
I mean, isn't that why? I mean, that's part of the reason why I lean a little bit libertarian when it comes to like the size and scope of government.
Yeah.
I worry about people having too much power, which is why I feel like we shouldn't have laws or we shouldn't have people in positions of things unless it's absolutely necessary. I think we have to be picky about what we choose to enforce because I worry about people do abuse their power all the time, even the power we
All
give
the
them.
time.
Police are caught abusing their power all the time, and that's why like I worry about people abuse. I don't trust people with power, which is why I worry why I have libertarian leanings. Like I'm anti-authoritarian, which is why I don't like the stuff that Trump's doing, because his whole administration has been very authoritarian.
Yeah, I agree with you. And I'm, by the way, I am not a person
when I say
who
libertarian,
thinks
I
he
mean
has done a shit job thus far. I'm not a human being who thinks everything he has said is the worst garbage ever. But I do absolutely believe that he walked in the door and became the authoritarian that he said Kamala was going to be.
I when I say libertarian, by the way, I don't mean libertarian party. I mean libertarian ideology. So on a political compass, right? Authoritarian would be here, and libertarian would be the opposite.
Yep.
Like authoritarian and libertarian would be polar opposites of each other. I lean more that way because I worry about people abusing their power. I don't trust people with power. Yeah. There are examples throughout history of people of benevolent rulers, the people who had a lot of power, who actually treated people well, but they're not very common.
Yeah, but there's not a single, and somebody historically fucking proved me wrong in what I'm about to say, but I'm pretty sure there's not a single ruler that everybody fucking loved. There's had to have been somebody who was pissed off about something, because that's part of human nature, right?
Probably, but there were some kings throughout history who were considered to be very kind, benevolent
So
rulers.
most people liked
but
them.
The majority,
somebody fucking hated
but
them.
the majority of rulers were not that.
I want anybody to think about this, okay? And anybody listen to what we were talking about, and go ask your friends this idea. But I want you to think about this. When you're surrounded by a group of your friends, the way you talk in public, the way you talk with them about certain other people and topics compared to when you are not around people who you know. If you are a super liberal, if you're all for the left and all that, I want you to go to a conservative rally and let's see how mouthy you fucking are. And I don't mean in front of a camera, and I don't mean with your best friend, by your fucking self. And then vice versa. If you're conservative, go to a liberal march or rally or whatever, and be just as mouthy as you would be, because you won't be. Somebody like Charlie Kirk, okay, is almost always, I'm so sorry I didn't turn my ringer off. That's twice now. My bad, dude. Somebody like Charlie Kirk, okay, can get away with saying a lot of the things he says, because not only is he protected legally, and he believes very strongly in that protection legally, but he also has security guards around him. And even when he steps out into the crowd, the way he talks to people changes when he steps out to it. And I don't blame him. I'm not saying this is a bad thing, because he has to be more protective when he's surrounded by people. But even most of the crowd is a supporter of his. But watch how the liberal steps up to the microphone, and some of them try to rebuff against the crowd, but ultimately they feel protected too, because they're on camera and they're security guards and they're at a campus. So, there's less chance of harm being done. My point is just, when you feel powerful, when you feel safer, when you feel like your voice is more valid in those spaces surrounded by your friends, you're way more fucking mouthy. And it's a minor example, but it's an example of when people have power, they will abuse said power. I know of times like, I can't tell people who or why this interaction happened, but there was a gentleman who we both know, who I ended up having a conversation with, and he was yelling and screaming at me because the previous night, somebody called him the N-word a few times. Now, this gentleman is not black at all, not part of the black community, not close to it, not married to somebody or dating somebody who is part of the black community. But he was called the N-word a bunch of times. The very next day, or 2 days later, I should say, 2 days later, I met up with the person, and they're very angry about being called this because of how much they hate this word, but they're using this word in a public place. But that public place is a place where they know the owner, they know the bartender, they know a lot of people who go there. They felt safe to say it. They felt a sense of power to be able to say it. And I pointed out to this person that they're in a public environment saying the same word that they were so angry that somebody associated to us used. And they didn't calm down. They just instead said that I was trying to incite them to be angry or some shit, which no, it's the logic of you're still in public. You're still going to create the same problem. But they said, well, I know the owner. They're never going to kick me out. He had a sense of power.
And the person who said it was actually a black person. So
the person, the person who actually said the N-word the night before
was
actually a person of color.
And not him.
Yeah, and not him, and he is not a person of color, and they're yelling and screaming at me saying, you should never say it, blah, blah, blah. I can't believe they called me blah,
and I can
blah,
be
blah.
100% certain because I saw this person's DNA test.
We have evidence.
Because we both did one.
Yeah,
and they
that's
were
funny.
they definitely had like 20% of their ancestry was directly from Africa.
Oh.
Or 20-30%, something like that.
My point behind it is just the sense of power.
Yeah.
Okay. And anybody can have it, by the way. No matter how many oppressive labels you fucking put on yourself or you can still sit in a spot and feel a sense of power. And that sense of power you will abuse. You will treat somebody else like ass just because somebody gave you the power to push a button to shut them up. Okay. It's that abuse of power that people don't like to look at all that much, but we're doing it to each other. And to get back to our point or our topic for today about the left and the right and about how we treat one another in conversations, every time you on the left or right abuse that power, you are stopping a conversation for our own societal growth from happening. So be mindful. Because if you're bitching and moaning that somebody has power and is oppressing somebody, make sure you don't become the exact same thing you're fucking arguing against.
Yeah. And I tend not to tolerate it, which is how I get myself into trouble. Because whenever I'm in a situation where people are acting like that towards me, I end up fucking causing shit. So.
You do. Well, you also get rather indignant and you like purposely try to fucking get a rise out of them. I used to. I don't as much anymore. I actually nowadays I'm more apt to go, okay, cool. And then they hate that even more because they're not getting a rise out of me.
Yeah.
Yeah. I like the other day, somebody said, don't you fucking hate when guys walk in a room and act like they own everything? And I went, sure. And they were like, well, it's a fucking problem because that makes everyone else feel that much lesser in a room. And I went, okay.
What does that mean?
I didn't ask questions.
What does that own everything? I would say like my example
of
that.
Walk in the room confident or arrogantly. Like, I don't know how that affected you.
Well, my example of that would be like when you're dealing with an entitled person, like a Karen.
Yeah.
When they if there's somebody who walks into a store and demands or expects everything to be done a certain way because they're so important. That's what I would equate to that. Yeah. But I don't know what they mean by like walks in like they own everything. Do you mean like they're acting entitled? Do you mean
or arrogant or confident or whatever? Like all I know is
confidence is not a bad thing.
Yeah, but it doesn't have anything to do with the person. No matter how somebody else walks in a fucking room, unless they're being loud and irritating or trying to shoot up the place or whatever, like it doesn't fucking affect you. So fuck off. Here's something I'll say about that entitled thing. I was standing in line at a coffee place the other day. Okay, I won't say where and I won't say why, but I was standing in line at a coffee place the other day, and the person behind the counter, okay, the human behind the counter, looked at me and then waved the person behind me to them, around me, and took their coffee order. And then I go to step up, and the person behind the counter said, "Excuse me just a minute. I need to help catch up with the orders." And I just stood there, and I didn't make any assumptions initially until the person who walked around me to order said, "It must feel weird to you to have somebody else be treated better for once." Now, I'm not proud of what I did next. And I actually haven't even told this story to anybody before. But I'm not proud of what I did. But I slapped that fucking coffee out of that fucking human being's hand. And I walked out. The sheer arrogance to look me in the eye and to say to me, how does it feel to have somebody else be treated better? They don't know what I've ever been through in my life. They have no idea. But just to look at my externals and say they deserve to be treated better and to actually be given that treatment. I understand people who look like me abused other people in that way a lot, but that doesn't give anybody the right to do it to me because I've never done that to other people. Sorry, I just want to bring that up because of all of what we're talking about today. And like, come on. Oh, and they also, on their shirt, they had a pin that said, that was a rainbow, and it said, inclusion is for everyone. Sorry. I think it's fucking funny that that's what their pin fucking said, and yet they felt like, you know, they should be treated better. Sorry. All right, I took that to a different place, didn't I?
No, I don't know what to say.
Yeah, all right. So on that note, remember to treat everybody equally, regardless of what their externals look like to you, because humans and individuals. So don't be assumptive assholes.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I will
that's
say
my
that
point.
on the flip side that
Yeah.
it is important to view things from group lenses at times. Like I said before, like there are times when looking at things through the lens of groups and oppressor versus oppressed is important, but I don't think that you can, like when you're doing individual interactions with people,
Yeah.
that typically that shouldn't be the way that you approach people, at least not at first.
You know, of the people we've interviewed on this show,
Yeah.
you know who I think should pay attention to groups? Oz.
Yeah.
Oswin. You know why?
Because Oswin, I don't know.
Oswin directly deals with senators and Congress people affecting policy changes because Oswin's work is about changing policies, which means Oswin needs to understand group
Right.
and the demographics about group and the statistics about groups and the impact that they're having on one another. The rest of us, on the other hand, need to knock that shit
Well,
off.
that's what I mean when you're interacting with people on a one-on-one basis.
Yeah.
Like your example you gave about the coffee place, but also just like if I'm interacting with customers at work, I have to treat every customer as an individual. I do fall into the trap of sometimes being a little prejudiced because a large majority of my customers are old people.
Mhm.
And sometimes I'm like, oh, another old fuck.
Yeah.
You know, they walk in
Yeah.
because my assumption is, my
Yeah.
prejudice is that they don't know anything about technology
Right.
and they're going to be a pain in the ass.
Yeah.
And 99% of the time they are.
Yeah.
But that's just because they're older and they don't know the technology and they didn't grow up with it. But it can be frustrating to deal with elderly
Right.
sometimes. But I don't act that way towards them. I treat them with patience and I'm kind to them.
Yeah.
But internally, I'm a little bit like, you know, it's a little frustrating dealing with people who don't know
So
anything.
it is human
Yeah.
to have prejudice and biases
Yeah.
of groups of people. But that's where we have to, as human beings, fight that initial reaction of, oh, holy shit, grandma's got another fucking cell phone. Well, like, have that thought in your head because you're going to have it one way or the other. But don't treat people. Your next thought should be, well, maybe not.
No, I treat them like I would anybody else.
Yes.
But
And
my
that-
initial
that's-
reaction to
come
seeing
on.
the old person is I'm like, oh, they're going to come in with some stupid issue.
Yeah. So somebody once told me that if I meet somebody of a group that is historically oppressed, I should treat them better because their group has been historically oppressed.
What does that mean? What does better mean? That's what.
Well, I asked and they said, well, I should be more considerate of them or some shit like that. And I kind of went, I don't get it. And I guess I understand their point, but I don't agree with it. I've always tried to treat everybody equally. And not just equally, but like, and definitely not the way I want to be treated. I actually treat people better than I expect people to treat me, which is probably why I treat people the way I do in public. But
I would say that when people would argue and say that you shouldn't treat them equally, you should treat them differently based on the information you have. So like you're going to give people, well, I'll give you an example that you would agree with. Like you're going to treat Becky differently than you would treat other people. You would give her more grace if she's doing certain things because of the fact that she's autistic.
Yeah.
And the same thing that you would
give everybody the same level of grace.
What
I give people a lot of grace, by the way.
I'm saying that your expectations for her behavior are different.
No. Okay. So let me clarify that then. My expectations of people are based on them as who they are as an individual. But like,
but if somebody's part of
like,
an oppressed class, you might have a little more patience with them.
No.
If they were frustrated about something related to their race, right?
No, because frustration's frustration. I'm going to hear anybody out with their frustration. I'm going to.
What if somebody was acting indignant or angry and they're part, let's say it's a black person who's acting indignant or angry, you might take into consideration the fact that they're part of a group who is discriminated against, or maybe they've been treated shitty by certain people. I'm saying that stuff might factor into it when you're assessing their behavior.
No, I'm not going to, unless they're frustrated or pissed off or angry because somebody was racist to them. And then that's a factor to it, because if I treat somebody differently because their demographic has historically been treated like shit, then I'm actually treating them differently because of the color of their skin.
I'm just saying that's what people would argue.
I know that's what
they would say. You shouldn't treat people equally. You should treat them based on.
And those people can kiss my ass. I'm gonna continue
because
to be
they would say
nice and kind to everyone equally.
They would say that let's say an adult white male doesn't necessarily need the same level of treatment as another group or another person.
I think all human beings need to be supported equally. I think all human beings need to be given the same level of empathy and understanding and compassion as all other human beings, because we don't know what they've been through in their life. They could be a white male from a rich fucking family. We don't know if daddy wouldn't dill on them. Like, come on.
Well, like the Menendez brothers?
Yes, we don't know what the person grew up with. We don't know that stuff. And that stuff's actually super more important than the fucking shit you want to talk about. That's part of their intersectionality.
Actually, one thing, I don't know if this is true, but I remember somebody talking about statistically wealthier people are much more likely to commit suicide versus poor people, which is interesting to me. So if you're poor, you're much less likely to kill yourself.
Yeah, because you don't have time to kill yourself.
I guess you're busy trying to survive and eat.
Yeah, that's like a simplistic view, but yeah, you don't have the time to think about it.
They said something along the lines of like suicide is like a privilege thing.
Yeah.
It's for like, you have to be like
upper middle class
and richer people are the ones committing suicide.
Well, they got more time on their hands to think about shit,
I guess.
Yeah.
That's really interesting.
Well, I mean, and that doesn't hold true all the time, because there are poor people who kill themselves too. It's just the poor have tendency to do it through really shitty decisions. I'm one of them, so before you fucking judge me. Yeah. So no, because I fixated on something.
It sounded like an awkward pause for you.
Yeah, well, because I had a bunch of thoughts in my head, because now I'm on that track about like treating people equally and shit. And like, I know somebody's going to be like, well, societally, we need to. I ain't talking about societal treatment. I'm literally talking about how I treat other people. And you can say that I have to take people's generational traumas into consideration and shit. Fuck that. I'm going to be a decent human being to somebody. And what I mean by decent is I'm not going to hit you. I'm not going to swear at you unless you swear at me. And I'm not going to make stupid ass assumptions about you just because of the way you look or whatever label you tell me you are.
Yeah.
Like, that's bare minimum treatment of human decency. And I'm not a big fan of going above and beyond for people. So,
all right.
Yeah. So on that note, we should probably end. Thank you very much, everybody, for listening in. Please follow, like, share, subscribe, clicky, hardy, repost, or whatever other buttons there might be sitting in front of you. If
spay and neuter your pets.
Yes, please. Or your children, whichever one you want to do.
Pee pee poo poo.